gentlemen, and members of the board. My name is Joe. I'm joined here today by my colleagues Jed, Madeline, and Jake, and we're here today on behalf of Summit Management Consulting. When you briefed us on Thursday, you expressed the need to create a sustainable job program, and you also want us to look into some of your objectives going forward. Through our analysis, we saw some recurring themes and alarming social and economic themes that we would like to remedy here today. Our recommendation involves developing an externship program. This would be placing the blind into positions with corporations throughout the nation. This program that we're proposing today would create quality employment, change some of the mindsets of people around blind employment, and it would also be a sustainable program going forward. This will help you towards your goal of creating personally and financially independent blind people throughout the nation. Thank you for your time today. I'd now like to introduce Jake to walk through a situational analysis.
Thank you very much, Joe. This right here is Mitchie. Mitchie is a college student in Southern California. Like us, Mitchie faces the problem of postgraduate employment. Companies want her to have experience, but she doesn't have the opportunity to go out and get meaningful experience. Unfortunately, on top of that, Mitchie is also blind. And through a survey that the National Industries for the Blind found with 400 executives, 54% of these executives thought that Mitchie wouldn't be able to do many of the tasks at their company. In addition, 42% thought that she would need someone around her at all times in order for her to work at their companies. Now, these are stigmas that we are looking to expel today and work towards getting rid of. Now, there are external factors that impact both Mitchie and your organization as a whole. The first being that donations since 2005 are down about 5%. Now, while they have rebounded in recent years, they are still not at their peak. In addition, government spending is becoming a bit unreliable. And what this means for your organization is that when government spending becomes unreliable, you don't have the opportunity to continue to work with these contracts, create these Skillcraft pens that allow for the nonprofit agencies to employ blind people to produce these pens and sell them, meaning a decrease in jobs. In addition, these Skillcraft pens aren't as marketable with the personal consumer market. I've already discussed the stigmas with you. And in addition, there's a heavy reliance by your organization on these not-for-profit agencies. While you do yourself employ blind individuals, many of the employees that you help are working with these not-for-profit agencies. And while you do not rely on donations, these organizations do. So when donations are down, they need an alternate source of funding or another way to create jobs for blind individuals. This leads me to our decision criteria. These are three things that we think need to be laid out in any strategy that you're going to employ today. The first is that it creates quality jobs, paying more than minimum wage. The second is that it's going to help change mindsets in corporate America as well as the rest of America. And lastly is that it's sustainable in that it can fund itself and lay the foundation for long-term growth. All these three things culminate in personal and economic independence for the blind in our society. Now this leads me to our recommendation today, which is a corporate employment program through externship of 6 to 9 months that my colleagues Jed and Madeline will walk you through now.
Thank you, Jay. So as previously mentioned, we are recommending that you focus on blind students in the final year of their college education at both the undergraduate and graduate level, because as research dictates, this is the most critical time period in determining the likelihood of lifelong employment. As you can see here, there's a large gap between the blind and non-blind job placement rates following graduation, and we want to combat this at the source. Now, employment after graduation isn't exclusively a problem for blind students, it's a problem we all face. And one of the problems, as Jake mentioned, is the chicken or the egg scenario, where employers want you to have previous experience. So what many universities have been doing to combat this is developing cooperative education programs that allow students to supplement their education with 6 to 9 month externships, similar to what you already offer successfully to a few lucky blind individuals internally. Now, the universities that have been offering these cooperative education programs have dramatically seen job placement rates increase, as you can see here. So what we're recommending is you utilize this university cooperative education model and partner with corporations to develop externships that you can offer to blind students following graduation. This will allow you to greatly increase job opportunities, while at the same time increasing awareness of the capabilities and value of blind employees, which will lead to economic and personal independence. Now, to develop this program, I'm going to show you how, I'm going to walk you through this, which starts with sourcing coordinators. We recommend you hire 4 initial coordinators to act as a midpoint between the corporations and the blind students at these colleges. The coordinators will develop relationships with the corporations to source externships that they can place the students within. And the ideal candidates will have previous experience as corporate recruiters and preferably experience dealing with students. Now, when you expand and grow this offering of the externship program, you're going to incrementally hire more and more coordinators by year to facilitate the rapidly growing amount of students that you'll be working with.
The second phase of this implementation that we're recommending is to develop relationships with universities and corporations. The first part of this is having these newly hired coordinators reach out to universities through their disability resource centers as well as blind students at these universities. It's vital for these coordinators to know what the types of jobs and opportunities the blind students at these universities are looking for. Schools such as UCLA and Cornell and largely every school in the United States have these disability resource centers that will be able to champion your organization and the corporate employment program, as well as create communication networks between yourself and these students. You'll also be cultivating this candidate pool and really understanding where these students are, what they're looking for, and how you can best meet their needs. After developing these relationships with the universities, the coordinators will move on to developing relationships with corporations. As Jed mentioned, we're recommending that you hire coordinators who have previous experience working with corporations or have personal connections to larger corporations. Here we outlined organizations or companies that have previous track records hiring blind people. We think it's vital that you stress the benefits that these companies have received by hiring blind people, as well as really highlighting what it's like to hire a blind person and what it's like to have a blind person working in your organization. Because as Jake mentioned, there's a lot of stigma around hiring blind people. So when you're going to a company such as GE Aviation, which we outlined as an organization that might be willing to hire a blind person in the future, it's really important to show that Deloitte has had great success hiring blind people in the future, because they'll be more likely to hire that blind person afterwards. So the third and final phase of our implementation is to actually start placing these blind students into these jobs that have been cultivated. We're recommending that you start this phase of the program in 2015. This will give you ample time to cultivate these relationships and find jobs for these students to be placed in. In the first year, we're recommending that you target 4 states: New York, California, Texas, and Florida. These states have the highest number of blind students in college, and the total market size is 24,000 students, which seems incredibly daunting. And finding externships for all of these students isn't something that we feel that you can do right now, which is why we're recommending that you create 121 externships in the first year. With these 121 externships, we are predicting that 40 of these students will receive full-time offers from their initial placement. The additional 81 students who don't necessarily receive an offer, we still believe are more likely to receive an offer down the line than a student who did not go through the corporate employment program. To fund this program, we're recommending that you take a 3.5% fee from these students who receive a full-time offer just for their first year of salary. So you can fund the program, create additional opportunities for students like Mitchie that Jake outlined, so they can continue to create and cultivate their own personal and economic independence.
So, in implementing our recommendation, you're not only going to be increasing jobs by a cumulative 4,983 quality jobs for students like Mitchie by 2020, but you're going to be increasing awareness in corporate America that blind people are just as capable and have the same value that non-blind employees have in the workplace, which will again lead to personal and economic independence. I'm now going to let Joe bring you through a brief overview of our recommendation.
Thanks, Jed. As mentioned, you asked us to create a sustainable model going forward. Our model will be self-sustainable by 2017. In summation, this consists of sourcing like-minded individuals and coordinators who share your goals to network with these corporations and colleges to create these externships, which will place individuals like Mitchie into positions where he can gain the valuable experience to have a better chance of gaining meaningful employment going forward. What we'd like to stress here today is that we're not proposing a handout or a gimmick. What we're proposing is a program that is not going to be easy, but will have a meaningful impact going forward in your mission of creating, again, productive and, financially and personally independent blind people moving forward in today's community. Thank you so much for your time today. We'd now like to open up to any discussions and questions you may have.
Go ahead.
In the beginning, you showed a slide that indicated corporate America CEOs are weary of hiring blind because of cost and benefits. What do we show them to encourage them to enter the externship program that would cause them to look at things in a more productive way?
So what we believe, again, based on the survey that you conducted and further research that we saw, was that the largest issue is based on education and knowing that in reality it's not as risky and it's not as expensive to employ blind people. So what we've suggested is the development of what we're calling education packages that include employer testimonials that other employers can relate to, knowing that they face the same struggles as other managers in their industry. In addition, there are true statistics in the ability of the blind once trained, when they have the tools available. And we'd also like to provide information about the true costs and the benefits of some of the software packages that are available, such as JAWS. There's bulk pricing, and compared to the large overhead that is involved in hiring really anybody, the idea of having a JAWS package for, in essence, what is around $900 for a blind person, we believe is a nominal cost.
Where do you get your statistics from?
Statistics, we have a separate source.
These statistics were sourced from 2007 research report by McDonough University. And the report also indicates that blind employees stay on the job 5% longer than non-blind employees, meaning they're more loyal to the corporation they work for. And in addition, they take 18% less scheduled absences.
Could you talk about the scaling of jobs over the years? I saw it grew pretty exponentially from 2015 with 40 down up to like 4,000 aggregate.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're showing you is that in 2015, basically this is half the year, because you were going to see, you're going to start halfway through the year in 2015, and that's why the numbers seem to jump so much in 2016. But what this growth really comes from is by expanding your focus into multiple states year by year. And what we've come up with is expanded to 4 states each year until 2020, and this will grow your target. And by partnering with the disability centers in the colleges of the given states, you will grow the base of blind students you were able to place into externships, and by hiring additional coordinators year by year, you're going to be able to manage this growth while at the same time making more relationships with corporations to procure additional externships for the blind students. Because as you get more students, you're also going to need to get more externships. But one thing we feel is that through the program and the successes you'll see from the beginning, that's what you're going to have to base your going out to these corporations on, is the fact that this is working, and it will continue to work, and that's why they'll start to accept more and more externships in the future.
What was the initial cost of setup in 2015 for hiring the coordinators?
So we have initial capital outlays in the first 3 years of $608,000, which we are recommending you take from your initial cash and cash equivalents on your balance sheet right now of $3 million. You also have current assets of $60 million, which you can use to facilitate this. But the $608,000 goes towards the coordinator's expense and most of the miscellaneous expenses in the first year, and then coordinators, and then you will hire a vice president in the second year. So in the first 3 years, you're going to see a net loss and a net negative change in assets. But in 2017, as you can see, this program starts to become more sustainable, and going into the future, your future gains will offset these initial losses.
I had another question. So the companies that you showed that are kind of blind-friendly, GE Aviation and Deloitte and so on, did you happen, I'm just curious, to get any sense for why these particular companies were more blind-friendly? What motivated them?
What we found is that usually what happens is someone will have a personal connection with an individual who's blind and see that they are just as capable, if not more capable, than individuals who currently work there. And unfortunately, this is the way that it seems to grow. Hiring more blind individuals allows for them welcoming more blind individuals. The same way that we saw changes in minority hirings over the years, the past few decades, with whether it be women in the workforce, as you hired more and they proved themselves, they were able to continue to hire more and more on.
So the salaries that you had, like you vice president, $60,000, that was for the vice president to run the show for the coordinators?
Yes. We wanted to make sure that there was someone who all the coordinators could report to and could just manage across all the states that you're going into. And we have also, to scale this beyond, to further scale this, we have recommended you hire an additional vice president in 2018 so that you will have 2 vice presidents from 2018 to 2020 going forward as you start to grow and grow more.
Do you think that's a market salary?
We believe 60,000 is competitive for the job that they will be doing. But again, it might be a slight decrease than they'd see in the private sector. But the people you want to hire aren't necessarily the people who are going after the absolute highest salary, but the people that want to have a high salary while still maintaining a large social impact.
Can you tell me a little more about how MPAs can fit into the picture, what their roles and responsibilities would be, how they would be impacted by your new strategy to develop an externship program, just kind of whether you would leverage that relationship or see it growing in a different direction?
Sure. So what we're recommending isn't that you completely eliminate the idea of working with MPAs. That has been the core business that you've been running. We want these things to run congruently, and what we are recommending is not, while we are saying that they should go into states, that does not disallow the opportunity for these MPAs to recommend individuals into this program. They have already done a great job of cultivating these blind employees who work very well and have proven themselves in the workforce, and we don't think that you should discriminate against that. You should welcome their recommendations and treat them as if they are applying for any job or any internship, and that they are on the same playing field as anyone coming out of college.
Additionally, these MPAs also already have some corporate ties which you can leverage to facilitate externships.
Are there particular types of services you would look to move the students in on these externships?
What we've noticed,
Showmen, call centers?
what we've noticed is that the majority of the cooperative education programs that these universities are operating in primarily skew towards both business and engineering. And these are two skill sets that blind employees absolutely have in college and can absolutely do in a corporate environment. So what we're saying is while the MPAs have done a great job and you have done a great job of placing blind employees in services like call centers and 508 assurance, we want to give these blind students another option of breaking into corporate America and getting jobs at, for example, Goldman Sachs or GE Aviation, where they can have quality employment that leads to further promotions and really breaking down the walls between corporate America and blind employees. Because if you have employees in these large corporations, they can show the other employees that they can do just as good of a job and in turn bring in more blind employees, as Jake mentioned.
1 minute.
I have one more question. Did you guys consider kind of like a post-externship model of support for the people who kind of fall through and end up not finding jobs? Is that something that you think you would have capacity for initially or maybe in the future? Any ideas?
Sure. So what we've noticed through analyzing schools that enact this cooperative education program is that students don't necessarily have to go through one cooperative education sector, they can go through multiple segments of it. So sometimes schools will allow for 2, possibly even 3 rotations before companies are willing to decide whether or not they are going to employ these individuals full time. Now this doesn't mean that they have to be working at the same company 3 times over, because honestly, these individuals should be interviewing the companies they're working for as well. If they're not happy at the company they're working for, they shouldn't accept a full-time offer and should go back into the pool and look for another opportunity down the line.
Like past the 18 months that you guys had for finding a job, like how do you plan on supporting those people if they haven't found a job?
What we kind of came around to thinking is that you have done a great job of training blind individuals to go out into the workforce. And if this program isn't sufficient after 18 months of getting blind students into the corporate America, they can fall back into the programs that you already provide at great success, and they can start to work with your MPAs as well.
We need a conclusion.
So as a brief overview of what we walked you through today, our recommendation is a bit of 3 steps. It's 1, seeking out and finding recruiters who are able to do this job. It's 2, leveraging their relationships to create partnerships with both colleges and corporations. And 3, creating employment opportunities, both short-term and long-term, for these blind individuals. Now, unfortunately, what we've seen is that currently your employment rate is the lowest it's been in recent history. Through our work with externships, we expect to see a substantial increase in employment opportunities for the blind. And this, as we said, is a combination of both what you work with the nonprofit agencies and larger corporations. Now, as my colleagues have mentioned, we are looking at 4,983 cumulative jobs. These aren't just jobs where they're part-time. These are full-time jobs with benefits that allow for them to not worry about relying on government assistance week by week, not worrying about minimizing their hours each week, and it's laying a foundation for the future. What it is the idea that these individuals are starting young and being able to support themselves both economically and personally for the remainder of their future. Now we'll bring it back to Mitchie here. And what we said is we found these results, and what we're talking about is all these stigmas around them, right? So executives have said that there are few jobs that blind people can perform, like blind people like Mitchie can perform. Now what we want to do is we want to start changing the mindsets, and we believe that this can be done through our implementation today. We want to change it so there are a few jobs that they could not perform. We want to change the idea that it would be a considerable expense to a not considerable expense. The idea of they need someone around them at all times to perform their job, where we want people to think that they should have someone like this at their company rather than needing someone aside them. And lastly, the idea that they're more likely to have accidents at work just because they don't have perfect vision. We want people to be able to see that they have different perspectives and that they can add value to this company. Bringing in someone who has different characteristics and different traits is something very valuable to a company, especially when they get into ideas of groupthink. Having an outside perspective that they haven't had in a long time will be very beneficial. Now, through our recommendation, we expect that you can continue to lay the foundation for future employment and continue to provide quality jobs to these blind individuals, and eventually increase that number of 4,983 to something much higher, and create an America where we live and look back and laugh at the idea that there are stigmas against blind people in the industry, in corporate America. And that is an America we hope to live in one day. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.